Hello everyone, welcome back on our YouTube channel. As you already know that we have started a video series for ISTQB exam, and till the last video we have covered three chapters we have discussed in detail. Now today we will start chapter number 4, which is about the test techniques. This chapter is very important. It's a bit of like calculation based. You need some calculations, not that in depth, but the basic techniques for test. First of all, during the normal videos I will give you while studying the theory, basic example how the test looks like, how the question in the exam look like. But when we are done once with the whole course content of ISTQB, I will start to upload bonus videos related to different sort of test techniques, multiple types of numericals to solve which come into exam. This chapter is very important for the exam, and in fact all the chapters are very important, but this chapter like normally is a kind of scoring. So like how you can easily score many points in this chapter. So we will study different test techniques in this in this chapter. So categories of test techniques. First of all, like why do we need test technique? Actually test technique helps you to identify what will be your test cases, test conditions, test data, everything. You can analyze the test cases and design and discuss which technique you will use. The purpose of a test technique, including those discussed in this section, is to help in identifying test condition, test cases and test data. The choice of which test techniques to use depend on a number of factors, like which technique you will use ideally, component or system complexity, regularity standard, customer or contractual requirement, risk level, available documentation, tested knowledge and skill, tools, time and budget. There are many things actually that decide which test technique you will use. Some techniques are more applicable to a certain situation and test level, others are applicable to all test level. Like sometime, with your past experience, you come across a scenario and you say, oh, for this test I will apply this test technique, so you are very clear. Sometime for some cases test techniques are standard and fixed, no other technique can be used, so it comes with the experience. When creating a test case, testers generally use a combination of test technique to achieve the best result from the test effort. The use of test technique in the test analysis, test design and test implementation activities can range from very informal to very formal. The appropriate level of formality depend on the context of testing, including the maturity of test and development process, time constraint, safety or regularity requirement, the knowledge and skill of people involved, and the software development lifecycle model being followed. It's very important because anyhow when the work product is ready, then you have to apply some test technique on that. You have to execute the test. For example, when the code is ready, you have to test that code. You need to think, for example, a code is ready to some automotive domain and is safety critical, so you need to be very careful which test technique you will use. So you can check all the valid values, you can check all the invalid values, different scenarios, different test cases. So based on that, then you drive your test cases and test scenarios, then you design your tests. You, as we have seen in chapter number 1, 7 step of test process. So this all, the test analysis, test design, test implementation, all is based on your test technique, which test technique you use. Normally the famous test technique which are being used or particularly in this syllabus what we are focusing on are black box, white box or experience based. So first of all, black box. As the name is suggesting, the black box technique, actually you don't know what is inside the box, you don't know your code, you don't know your work product, and then you have some inputs and then you have some outputs. Based on that, you see that if system is working or not. Black box technique is also called as behavioral or behavior based technique because it decides the behavior of the black box. You don't know how the how this black box or this particular product looks like, but you only know the behavior by providing the input and getting some outputs. Are based on analysis of appropriate test bases, formal required document specification, use cases, use stories or business process. So actually black box technique is totally based on the requirements, your specs, your software requirement specification, And actually test cases can be derived by looking at the specification and test basis. You don't know what is inside the that black box, inside that product that you are testing, or that module that you are testing. You only have specifications, you only have requirements. You apply that requirement based on test case, based on that requirement you get the output, and then you decide either this product is working as expected or not. These techniques are applicable to both functional and non-functional testing. Like black box can be applied on both functional and non-functional. Like this is very important line. Black box technique concentrate on the input and output of test object without reference to its internal structure. You only focus, you have the you have your uh, object or the product you need to, or your module, whatever black box you are gonna test. You know the inputs, based on that you check some outputs and then you decide. It's black box. White box technique, also called structural or structure based technique, are based on analysis of architecture, detailed design, internal structure, or the code of the test object. So it's white box technique, also known as structural based technique, as the name is suggesting. Like you know the internal structure, you know the interfaces, you know the detailed design, you know the architecture, you know the code. Based on that you do the testing. So white box is a clear white box. Unlike black box test technique, white box test technique concentrate on the structure and processing within the test object. You know the detailed design, na? The third one is experience based technique, like leverage the experience of developer, tester and user to design, implement and execute tests. These techniques are often combined with black box and white box technique. So experience based technique, actually as the name is suggesting, they are totally based on the experience of the developer or tester or the user or the designer. So it actually supports the black box or white box testing. It's a complementary kind of testing. It supports, sometimes it's performed all alone, but normally in 90% cases, 95% cases, it supports the black box and white box testing in some cases. Common characteristic of black box testing include the following. So now what are the common characteristic of black box? Test condition, test cases and test data derived from the test basis that may include software requirement, specification, use cases and user stories. Test cases may be used to detect gap between the requirement and implementation of the requirement, as well as the deviation from the requirement. So you have the requirement, based on that you drive some test cases, and you check each requirement for that. If you say that this requirement is not fulfilled, then you can report back to the developer. Coverage is measured based on the item tested in the test basis and technique applied to the test basis. This we will see what is the test coverage or code coverage, how we will check it. This we will discuss in detail when we will solve some problems related to the black box technique. Common characteristic of white box technique include test condition, test cases and test data derived from a test basis that may include code, software architecture, detailed design or any other source of information regarding the structure of the software. So you know the structure of the software actually. Coverage is measured based on the item tested within a selected structure, code or interfaces and technique applied to test basis. Like we will see, for example, you have a 10 requirements, and then you have when you apply some inputs you get some output. You see only 8 out of 10 requirement are covered. You say your coverage is 80%. So it's a coverage. You will see individually in details, in more detail about the coverages, but only for your information I was telling you that it is a kind of like a rough idea. Common characteristic of experience based technique include test condition, test cases, test data are derived from test basis that may include knowledge and experience of tester, developer, user and other stakeholder. This knowledge and experience include expected use of software environment, likely defects and a distribution of those defects. So you can see, if you want, there is a standard for the techniques, but it is not necessary for the foundation level.